Hey guys, it's about 7:33. I just got dropped off by the bus here on Merced, and I thought I'd do this little audio video, potentially, next edition of my BW Roots Discussions podcast on something that I've talked about before, and I know, some people feel it's a little weird to talk about because it's like, why are you a fan of that, or why would you talk about that in any manner? Like, why would you even, talk about, different types of, variations of it, occurring? And I totally get where you guys are coming from. I really do. I totally get it. But here's why, in my opinion, and you probably see the title already, why the lustful milk gag, trope, if you will, is so beloved, by a lot of people besides myself. Why it's so beloved and, popular among a lot of folks. I mean, you go on places like DeviantArt and Furnifidiot, heck, you read stories on fanfiction.net, adultfanfiction.net. You go to places like Echo's Portal, Ink Bunny. You go to all these different places, and in one shape or another, they do have images, pictures they've drawn, whether they're 2D, whether they're cell drawings, CGI drawings, whatever you want to call them. You have people, or even with the stories, you have, whatever, however they write them, whether they're like web comics or just written works. You have people, basically focusing on the lustful milk gag as a gag or trope that they would use for a male, or in most cases, and I say it with all due respect, no offense, female characters. And why do they use it? Because it's a popular trope. It's a popular gag, and it's funny. It's very funny to kind of write, I guess you could say, write a visual representation, of that gag. Kind of write, draw, animate, a visual representation of that trope, of that gag. Because as I've said before in, a lot of videos, when a live action female character, if you will, and again, say that with all due respect, no offense, but when a live action female character, or even sometimes a male character, acts in that kind of manner, to coin a phrase, it's because, they're attracted to whoever is in front of them. They will say or act, and even simultaneously say and act, that person's causing them to melt just because of how enamored they are with them, how attracted they are to them. And, there's no wrong in that kind of a gag being, written in for the character, male or female, to somewhat act upon. Even if visually, there's no, I guess you could say, representation of it happening. I mean, again, a show that is on Netflix, believe it or not, I'm kind of surprised by that. It's not, it's not on Paramount Plus, where you think it might end up, is Major Dad. And it's an episode in the second season where the Major and his wife go on a second honeymoon. They're making out on a bed, and she tells him she's melting. But you don't see her actually do it, right? You don't visually see her do it. You see and hear her saying it, or them making out. The point the point that I'm getting at is a lot of artists, even from the beginning of time, have wrote that gag into the story. And all animators and even comic book drawers have done in the past. All they've done is visually, and I mean visually, they visually, hold on for a sec. Sorry about that. Just hold on for a sec. But like I said, visually, all the comic book writers and animators would do is just, they would just draw it. They would animate it. They would bring it to visual life. Because they know in a live action sense, there's no way it's going to happen unless special effects, even back in the day. I mean, nowadays, potentially it can happen because of CGI and VFX, effects and all that. There's no doubt about it. But, back in the day, they'd have to be very careful from a special effects standpoint on how they would visually bring that to life in a live action setting, which is why it mostly was involved in animation, and that's why a lot of people became fans of it, because one of the things that made them really be like fans of it is, hey, what if a elastic character or character, male or female, with elastic powers, got attracted to somebody, male or female, to the point that because they're elastic, if you will, malleability, if you will, that, they would melt. They would just turn to goo. From a story perspective, that makes sense. That makes sense because, okay, the character has that power to do so. That character has that power to do something like that, no questions asked. Even if it's a character that's established in places like DC or Marvel or IDW or Image, there's no guessing or wondering, okay, why would you make the character do that if you know that character's main power is elasticability? The thing is when you have characters like that, it makes it easier for the writers or the artists or animators to do something like that, to do the visual gag. There you go, the Lustful melt. But when it comes to other shows and other cartoons, or the past and present, they could do it, and all they have to just explain is, visually, this is how she feels. Because they know, live action wise, nowadays they could probably pull it off, but it'd be a little bit more, I think, above their pay raise, if you will, or their payroll, just for that one effect. So why not just go with the animation route? Which is why, you saw, cartoons in the past, like a Porky Pig's Swoonoo Crooner doing it, with that black rooster, with that black hen, if you will, and how she reacted. This is why you saw basically, Olive Oil do it in Paulet's Foo-Woo, one of the last theatrical shorts. That's why you saw her do it. I mean, heck, this is why you saw when Tiny Toons, the original Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs came back, why they revived it. Because they know from a visual standpoint, it looks awesome. From a visual standpoint, it looks, it looks funny, it looks great and all that. People will get a kick out of it. People will, get a kick out of it from a visual, from seeing it from a visual standpoint. Because if they just, read it or read about it without any visuals, they can imagine what's happening in their mind. I mean, like I said, go back to Major Dad, the wife saying she's melting. They could visually imagine her doing that, but that's about it. They don't see no visual representation. But with shows like Tiny Toons, like Animaniacs, and a lot of shows that came afterwards in the 90s and 2000s and all that, you see that gag happen. You see it happening. You see it with, Groove High, where the flashbacks were animated. And the character Zoe melted into a puddle of water after being flirted by Tom's alter ego Dom, who he was in disguise as. Or you see it in Blindsided, or the Blindsided episode of Captain Flamingo with Flamingo's best friend Elizabeth, after his other best friend uses his voice synthesizer, or whatever it's called, to change his voice into a suave voice, and Elizabeth melts from that. If both those shows were more live action oriented, you wouldn't see something like that. They'd have to come up with something a little bit more different, if you catch my drift. They'd have to come up with something a little bit more different. But it's because of the animated visualization and representation of the gag. That is why it's gotten so over, with a lot of fans, with a lot of folks. Because of the fact that, it's just something you don't see every day. I mean, we haven't yet seen it in the new Animaniacs reboot. We have yet to see it in Tiny Toon University, but we may. It all depends on what they do. But, again, it's just one of those gags, if you will, one of those tropes that, because you don't see it as much, because I guess you can say somewhat of it being rare, it's become very popular, which is why a lot of folks will use it, in the stories or in the web comics, either writtenly or visually. They would do it. Heck, sometimes they'll use it in the animations, whether the SFW animation, NFSW animations, SFM animations, borderlining on CGI animations. You get the idea, or even traditional 2Ds and all that. They were added in because, one, it's a popular gag that visually you don't see that much, even though it is out there. You don't see it as much. It's kind of a rarity, believe it or not. But they use it because of the fact that they themselves found it funny. They themselves liked it when it would just happen. And by putting it in the stories, if you will, putting it in the stories and stuff, putting it into the animations, the web comics and stuff, they are basically, in my opinion, sending a message if they want to see more of this. They want to see more of this gag, this trope, be represented. I mean, heck, you got anime that's adopted it itself. You got anime that's adopted it, so that's kind of cool, in a sense. But like I said, they are basically sending a message, in my opinion, of the fact that they want to see this gag be represented, more so than it is. And, they would love nothing more than for that to happen. And this is why the Lustful Melt trope and gag is very popular and beloved by a lot of people besides myself. But I just thought I'd come on and talk about that, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. Love to hear from each and every one of you on this. I'm about home, so I'm going to cut it off short. Again, you may see this show up on my BW Rose's Discussion podcast series. And until then, guys, though, I will talk to y'all later. Let me know what your thoughts are down below on all this. Are you a fan of the gag? Are you a fan of the trope? Did you ever find it kind of weird that it was used at times in shows and movies and all that? Let me know down below, and in the live chat during the premiere, and I will talk to y'all later.